Today on Fun Fast Facts Friday, we examine phenoxyethanol. Friend or foe? Well, it is an aromatic ether alcohol. The chemical structure looks like this. Like most synthetic chemicals, we know that it starts out with one chemical. It is exposed to a series of chemical reactions to become its final state of phenoxyethanol. Some of the chemicals along the path of the chemical reaction of creating phenoxyethanol are known to be carcinogenic, but does that make the final substance, phenoxyethanol, toxic? Today I am sitting down with phenoxyethanol to try to get a better understanding of his point of view. So, phenoxyethanol, can I call you Pheno or do you prefer oxy?
I prefer to be called Pheno.
Tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm a preservative. I preserve things so you can keep them longer.
So according to the CIR, they put you in a lot of skincare products.
Yes, I became very popular when parabens became very unpopular.
I've also heard you dabble in soaps and fragrances.
Well, yes, I do. That's because I stabilize things. I am very stable.
Before we go back to our one-on-one with phenoxyethanol, let's talk about some of the stats. If you go to the CIR, the Cosmetic Ingredient Review, which is pretty much the standard for cosmetic chemists, you'll find this article from the Journal of American Toxicology. Now, by far one of the most quoted lines you will read in people advocating for the use of phenoxyethanol is the line from the very first page from the intro of the article. And that says that phenoxyethanol is practically non-toxic when administered orally or dermally to rats. Now, in 2007, the International Journal of Toxicology reviewed all the new data and studies and decided it was still safe and decided not to reopen the case of if phenoxyethanol is safe. They decided it was. So, Mr. Pheno, how did you get such a bad rap?
Well, people call me a disruptor. They say I get around your endocrine system and disrupt it. But that's never been proven.
Do you think you're safe?
Heck yeah, I'm safe.
No, I don't want to get a drink later. No, I don't think that we have a connection. In fact, security! Security! Let's cut the shenanigans. What's the real deal here? Well, what do we know? We know phenoxyethanol is a synthetic chemical. We know it's used in beauty products as a preservative. We know that the CIR essentially says it's safe. Now, what I want to show you is a little bit of a compare and contrast to the conversation about phenoxyethanol. Let's take a look at the Honest Company's write-up on their blog about phenoxyethanol. And just a side note, I don't mean to be hating on the Honest Company. I'm not trying to do that. I actually think they're doing great work. They are still doing the best they can, which is what most people in green beauty are doing. So don't think I'm picking on them to bring this up. I'm just showing you that the conversation is very broad and that people don't agree on a lot of these things. So here we go. In the Honest Company's article, they quote the CIR and they use that line from the opening of the CIR report, which says that phenoxyethanol is practically non-toxic when administered orally or dermally to rats. Well, what no one fails to mention is that when they do these studies, they test out concentrations. So they went as high as like 2.5% in applying them to these animals. And there was a lot of adverse reactions. Now that's saying that they're giving it to them directly, they're directly applying it onto their skin, but just to balance out the conversation, let's scroll down to the summary of the CIR article. They didn't mention this in the opening credits, right? According to the classification scheme of Hodge and Sterner, phenoxyethanol is practically non-toxic to slightly toxic when it orally administered to rats and mice, and practically non-toxic when administered dermally to rats. just slightly toxic. Scroll down a little bit further and it says that system toxicity was produced when phenoxyethanol was applied to the skin of CFY rats. System toxicity being death. But was not produced when phenoxyethanol was applied to the skin of New Zealand white rabbits. So again, I mean, it's just something to take into account, is that they're saying it's safe, but in some concentrations it's not. So more on that in a minute. Let's talk a little bit more again about the differing opinions in the cosmetic community. So Stephanie Greenwood, a chemical of the day, if you've never checked out her website, she's pretty darn awesome and very user-friendly. I highly recommend her. She did a write-up for her local newspaper, the Utah Times, I think, or Utah Beat, I forget. Anyway, she wrote up phenoxyethanol, kind of laying out some of the dangers, particularly that it's an endocrine disruptor. Then she had a local chemist in the area write back and say, no, you're not right. And you're basically twisting the facts to make it look worse than it is. Well, then she wrote a response back to him. She had another chemist write back and say that, again, she was didn't know her stuff and that she was wrong. So she actually published all of this on her blog, and it's a very interesting read. And I highly recommend it, especially if you're going to be in green beauty, that you go take a look at it, because phenoxyethanol is popping up in more and more products. Now, that kind of moves us to the cosmetics industry as a whole, or green beauty just in general. Preservatives have gotten a really bad rap for being endocrine disruptors to being carcinogenic, so green beauty's moved away from that. Well, when you move away from using preservatives, you move away from putting water in your products. So kind of in my mind, I wonder, is that how green beauty became so obsessed with oils because they didn't require preservatives? And then my response to that is, well, that's just not going to work for me. I'm going to have preservatives in my life because I like water-based products. My skin likes water. So what is the answer here? Because everybody's picking on preservatives. Now, a lot of green beauty people use rosemary extract and vitamin E, but those are technically antioxidants, and a lot of cosmetic chemists would tell you those are not preservatives, and they are not going to preserve your products, and they don't have a very good broad spectrum base. So what's the answer? I don't know. You're gonna have to figure it out for yourself. Some of the things I kind of thought about in figuring it out for yourself. How do you figure it out for yourself? Well, let's take several factors into account. Number one, the amount of phenoxyethanol in a product. Now remember, in the USA, they don't have to report their final recipe of their products to the FDA. So sometimes there might be no telling how much phenoxyethanol is in something. So if you're concerned about it, you might be able to write to the company and say, I'm concerned about it. Can you verify that it's under 1% in this product? You know, if you ask them to give you a technical number, they might say no, but they might be able to assure you that yes, it is under 1%. Number two, the amount of items that you use that contain it. Is it in your face wash? Is it in your shampoo? Is it in your night cream? You know, if you're looking at 5 or 6 products of daily use, then you might think about finding a way to cut back on some of that exposure. If you're using it in 1 product a day, then you might say to yourself, well, that's a very limited exposure. It's a very limited amount. I'm not worried about that. So yeah, I'm not going to make up your mind for you, because I don't really think that there is a clear answer about a lot of these chemicals. What I do think is that it always goes back to looking at the big picture, and that is that there's just no getting away from the amount of synthetic, potentially damaging ingredients in our world today. One of the things I just wrote up for the Greenly Guide was on phthalates, and man, that to me, the more I read about it, the more I study, that is the number one thing I wish we could get out of our lives over phenoxyethanol or some of the other things that get vilified. So personally for me, I think we can pick on stuff like this, but it's just so nitpicky in my mind considering the big picture. And if green beauty is going to survive, then we need to look at the bigger picture and not be harping on a water-based product containing phenoxyethanol. So that's just my 2 cents. Let me know. Everything will be linked below. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on Monday for the big reveal of Face Mask Alchemy's July box. So see you then. Bye.